to just do a quick PowerPoint presentation on line drawing. Um, so starting with Hokusai, a Japanese artist, which I'm sure you've all seen his wave woodblock painting. He's also considered the inventor of manga. He would do these little comic book like publications where he would do illustrations of daily life. This one is of just a typical house cat. But I want you to pay attention to how he manages to create volume and mass with just simple line, even though there is also sort of color and a little bit of shading. He gets a lot done with line only. Same artist, Hokusai. Very flowing, very elegant line quality, and it sort of is. It's a line quality that's also, I think, is mirrors the sort of flowing elegance of the what he's depicting. The birds themselves also have kind of a very flowing, kind of elegant kind of movement to them, and the line quality also kind of has the same kind of movement. So you can see what some of his little books would look like. But also keep in mind he's using for a lot of these like a brush, and so he's able to sort of push down and lift up in creating thick to thin lines. And I'm also going to do a quick little demo video where I show you how to get better line quality out of your pencils. Still Hokusai. Line only, really. Very elegant brushwork. But I want you to pay attention to the thickness and the thinness, the very kind of elegant flow, and you could imagine how quick this was done. They're not slow lines. They're very kind of fast. I imagine that he did these very fast. More Hokusai. Let me just flip through some of these. Also, I think a master of composition, the way he sort of combines two frames from two different pages to go together. But again, the amount of information he's able to sort of convey through line and some shading. There is a little bit of shading, but it's mostly just black line with a little bit of fill-in. This is George Stubbs, an English painter. Did a lot of intricate studies of horses. Let me show you. Very insanely detailed anatomical studies. He's using, I think this is pencil with ink. Um, he would actually he took a corpse of a horse and would hang it up in a barn and try to have it look like it was a actual real standing horse to get all the anatomical detail. And the attention to detail is pretty amazing. This is a Rembrandt drawing. The thing I always point out with this piece is that keep in mind this is done way before the cameras existed, so there's absolutely no way he's taking a snapshot and then working from the snapshot. This is all, you can imagine the scene itself probably only lasted a few seconds. I'm assuming it's a mother maybe and grandmother maybe teaching a young child how to walk. So you can imagine, you can see the foot of the child lifting up, and so it's going to come down any second, and that hand that the adult has up is going to come down. It's a fleeting second, so I would imagine that he's doing this within mainly maybe from memory. He's probably drawing this mostly from memory. I couldn't imagine this scene lasting more than 2 or 3 seconds. Same artist, Rembrandt. Also, just notice the way he's using the side of the pencil, and then just the very, very quick movement. I always say it reminds me of the way someone signs a check, just very fast and very confident, and um, very minimal shading as well with this. Rembrandt again using a reed pen, and again keep in mind try to understand what the scene is. It's a I'm assuming a grandparent maybe with a baby, um, and fleeting moments that would not last very long. I think back in before there were cameras, I think people would have to rely a lot more on memory than we do today. This is Watteau. He was sort of like the master of this three-color on tone paper drawing. Also very, very quick, very able to sort of convey a lot of information with very few lines. Watteau also. And since we probably just finished, most of you hopefully by now finished your cross contour exercise, he's doing a lot of cross contour. He's moving along the surface and turning the line as the form turns. He's sort of defining a 3D kind of form with wrapping around cross contours. This is Albrecht Dürer. A very similar kind of technique of following the form going in and out, and all this sort of confusing dents of the pillow form. He's kind of following it with the line. And it's hatching, so it's sort of like shading. I always think cross hatching as being um, like a quick notation of shading. It's not quite shading, it's kind of a notation of shading without actually being shading, because it's still line based. Albrecht Dürer again. You should at some point maybe pause this and maybe take a long, slow look at just how much detail, how much I'd change how much information he's able to get with very sort of refined and constrained detail. It's not a lot of lines. It's a lot of information with very minimal lines. This is everybody's favorite. At least I used to think that. Sometimes I think new students don't know him as much. This is Vincent van Gogh. A reed pen drawing again. So it's literally, when I say it's a reed pen, it's literally, it's like almost like it looks like a piece of bamboo that's been sharpened and then to a point and then dipped in ink. So you're able to use like the edge of the reed. Kind of can have like a chisel-like edge, so you can get that fat line, and then depending on how much you sharpen it, you can get really thin lines. But I like the again, he's the master of getting a lot of information with very, very minimal line work. You see the dots in the distance, the thin lines in the distance, and they kind of get fatter as they get closer to you, kind of conveying a perspective with just line. That's a lot he has going on here. Again, Van Gogh again. And also, I mean, keep in mind how you can imagine, I'm assuming that's a bush, might be a hay bale, but you can imagine there's probably millions of little bits of information in this scene of grass, of twigs, of leaves, but yet he's managing to simplify it all down into basic little shapes. If you squint, you can read it very clearly what's going on. I think a lot of times when you're doing landscapes, you have to sort of simplify and edit things, even though you're overwhelmed with bits of information. Van Gogh again. And also, I think pay attention how the direction of the line. Some go vertical, some go horizontal, some kind of dash around in different directions. Some get small, some get spaced away, some just are little dots. And if you look at the scene, you can imagine what you're looking at. You're looking at fences, grass, dirt, houses, tiles on roofs. You're looking at a lot of information, but yet it's all been simplified into just little dashes and squiggles and dots. It's not as easy as you might think. This is a contemporary artist named Julie Moretu. Um, her paintings are really confusing. They're almost like architectural, but like dense with like layers and layers and layers. But to me, I kind of almost think of this. It's the same thing that's going on in the Van Goghs. There's different lines, different dashes, a different kind of space, but it is a space of sorts. It's kind of like an explosive space. This is her again, Julie Moretu. And I mean, I hope you try to put yourself in the position of the person who's having to make this. You're having to use the side of the pencil, having to use the tip of it, having to use different amounts of pressure, because there's some of the lines are very dark, some of them are very light, some of them have different kind of intensity and weight to them. So there's lots of different elements of touch that has to go into making these. This is another one of Julie Moretu's. I want to call it a landscape, but it's not technically a landscape, though it is very spatial. She might call him a landscape. This is Giacometti, mostly known as a sculptor, also did paintings. I like sculptor drawings because they have a good sense of form. I always feel like sculptors, when you look at their drawings or their 2D work, they're always trying to make it feel like it's a 3D thing. So I always kind of feel like when I look at his drawings, his line drawings like these, it always kind of reminds me of almost like a piece of wire that's being moved around 3D space. So he's going around inside and then outside. It does not feel like a 2D line that's sitting on a 2D surface. It feels very volumetric and spatial to me. I mean, that's what I would expect from any sculptor. Another sculptor who's doing a drawing here, this is Henry Moore. Also, I think what's interesting about this one is he's creating kind of an atmosphere. You know, the background kind of almost looks like the air itself has weight to it. Henry Moore again. Again, he does not ignore the I don't know what to call it, the air that's around what he's drawing. He kind of gives that its own level of attention. Another Henry Moore. I'm going to show you an image that is not a drawing. It's a relief sculpture. I always kind of feel like really good drawings kind of have a sense of relief to them, similar to this, where you feel as if the artist is pushing back the background and pulling forward the foreground objects. It feels very sculptural. Any good drawing feels almost like a relief sculpture like this. This is Degas, Edgar Degas, the French Impressionist artist. His drawings always have that kind of sense of relief to me, that I always feel like the object or the figure that he's drawing is coming forward and the space always recedes back. It feels very volumetric. And look how dense the lines are, the outlines are. But yet, you would imagine something with a heavy line might look kind of graphic and flat, but yet he manages to get a good amount of 3D sculptural solidity out of the figure. Edgar Degas again. Same thing, very volumetric form. And he's using a grid. We might do an assignment with a grid. I don't know if we're going to do it in this class. I have one assignment where we do a grid type drawing. Terry Winters, he's a contemporary abstract painter. I think lives in New York. So the different when you're working abstractly, there's different concerns, but at the same time, the same basic ingredients are there. Dot, line, density of line, thickness, thinness of line, composition. it feels there's some kind of space to this, but it's also a very narrow space. Terry Winters again. I kind of like this piece because it kind of reminds me of the assignment the cross contour assignment, where it's not just outline, the line goes over the form, and he's trying to define the surface, but with line only. And in reverse, he's using a dark ground with a light line.